The Sudan, the largest country in Africa, lies where the Sahara Desert meets the grasslands of the Sahel. Its westernmost region is called Darfur. Though small compared to the rest of the Sudan, the three provinces that make up Darfur are nearly the size of France.
The conflict in Darfur started in February 2003 when two rebel groups, the Sudanese Liberation Army and the Justice and Equality Movement, took up arms against the government due to economic, political and social marginalisation. The groups involved in this conflict are the Darfurians, that consist of the SLA and JEM. The other groups involved are the Janjaweed militia groups that are often referred to as the herdsmen on horseback, and the Sudanese government.
Since 2003, rebel groups have fought against the government, accusing it of supporting the Arab herders over the African farmers. The government's response caused a mass exodus, forcing villagers to become refugees in their own homeland. In this United Nations refugee camp along the Chad-Sudan border, the women and children here have found a safe haven from the Janjaweed, the armed militias of Arab herders organized by the government to fight the rebels and kill civilians. Entire villages have been burned, hundreds of thousands have died. Beatings, rapes, and mutilations are used as weapons of terror.
There are some economic factors that have contributed to the conflict, which has resulted in a clash between the Arab herders and black African farmers. These factors include poverty, underdevelopment, lack of employment, lack of infrastructure, marginalised from wealth, and regions of land being deliberately neglected. In addition, Darfur has less education, healthcare, and development assistance than any other region in their country. This has then resulted in the Darfurians responding in an angry and violent manner, which has stemmed from the neglect from the Sudanese government. The environmental factors contributing to the conflict in Darfur refer to the objective of the Janjaweed militia groups wanting to force the Darfurians off their land and to settle in their territory. The reasoning behind this is because the Janjaweed land is becoming less fertile for their cattle and farms and is becoming degraded. They are experiencing drought, desertification and famine. The Darfurians, however, have fertile land and traditional black African farmers. Therefore, the Janjaweed want the land in southern Darfur so they can settle into a more livable territory and lifestyle. There are also ethnic and religious tensions between these two groups. The Janjaweed are Arabic and follow the Muslim region, whereas the Darfurians are black Africans who are mostly Christians. As these groups both have different beliefs and traditional values, this is a significant factor in terms of contributing to the Darfur conflict. On May 5, 2006, the peace agreement was signed between the Sudanese Liberation Army and the Sudanese government, but was not, however, accepted by the Justice and Equality Movement. The aim of the peace agreement was to put an end to the conflict in Sudan, and was an attempt to minimise any further conflict. However, it has not been overly effective, as both sides have failed to fully honour the agreement. Therefore, whilst the conflict has been diminished since 2006, it has not ended. The UN has experienced some significant challenges in regard to taking action to the conflict in Darfur. The Sudanese government have been very difficult and have been rejecting the UN's request. In April 2006, Sudan rejected a UN resolution calling for a UN peacekeeping force in Darfur on the basis that it would compromise sovereignty. However, the Sudanese government used state sovereignty as an excuse not to sign and said that they didn't want an intervention in their internal affairs. Yet, the worsening crisis with militia attacking civilians and growing international pressure saw Sudan eventually relent. The 2006 peace agreement was signed between the SLA and the Sudanese government, but was not accepted by JEM. This meant that the process was delayed, as both sides had failed to fully honour the agreement. In August 2006, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 1706 to send 225,000 more peacekeepers and related personnel to Darfur to attempt to put an end to this ongoing conflict. However, China, Russia and Qatar abstained, which meant they did not vote or use their veto. The African Union Mission in Darfur, UNAMID, Authority has placed up to 15,845 military personnel, 1,583 police personnel, and 13 formed police units in the field. UNAMID is currently the second largest UN peacekeeping mission in the world and is contributing to the resolution of this conflict. The UN peacekeepers have faced many challenges in attempting to resolve this conflict in Darfur. The Sudanese government had initially resisted UN interference in Darfur, but eventually agreed to a hybrid military component consisting of a UN peacemaking force that would work with the African Union. Despite this agreement, the government remained unhappy with the UN involvement and consequently tried to impede the mission's work. It did not supply the force with equipment or protection, leaving the force to build its own camps in dangerous and remote locations. The government also delayed in issuing visas to the personnel and blocked the mission's access to important sites. In addition to this, logistical problems were prevalent as well, with only one railway line in Darfur connecting it to the rest of the country. The rainy season frequently rendered the roads impassable, and the scorching heat and frequent sandstorms also made working conditions difficult for the mission. Also, as Darfur has quite large land size, this results in providing humanitarian assistance very difficult, based on the few transportation routes and low water supplies. About 400,000 new internally displaced people were registered between January and August 2014 in Darfur. According to UN figures, 6.9 million people are in the need of humanitarian assistance in Sudan. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees is a United Nations agency that aims to provide life-changing humanitarian support to refugees and other displaced and stateless people. In January 2015, there were 8,910 refugees in Chad, of whom 8,830 were assisted by the UNHCR. These statistics suggest that the responses of the UNHCR have been highly successful in regards to assisting and providing support for refugees who are fleeing the conflict in Darfur. As the amount of refugees coming from Sudan will continue to increase in 2015 and 2016, the UNHCR will continue to lead and coordinate the response to this, and will advocate an expectable legal outline for newly arrived South Sudanese to ensure they can access the rights and entitlements stated in public statements by the authorities. The UNHCR has been very effective and successful in providing assistance and support to over 1 million Sudanese citizens by supplying and distributing emergency food and installing or rehabilitating structure and services like emergency water systems, schools and protection centres for women and youth. Since 2005, UNHCR has played a significant role in the recovery of tens of thousands of Sudanese refugees and the return of over 150,000 internally displaced people to their homes by providing them with travel papers, security, transport and food. UNHCR have succeeded in relocating more than 150,000 refugees into the 8 newly built campsites. This is a major accomplishment in its own right. However, despite this, the UNHCR is still in desperate need of assistance from NGOs and governments. The UNHCR can only provide limited humanitarian support and aid due to their small amount of resources. The International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for the President of Sudan for crimes against humanity. However, they cannot prosecute him if he stays in Sudan. In March 2005, the UN Security Council referred the case of Darfur to the ICC. In April 2005, the UN submitted a list of 51 Sudanese suspects to the ICC. The ICC investigation revealed that many high-ranking Sudanese officials were involved in the crimes committed in Darfur. The ICC prosecutor issued 3 arrest warrants for the leaders of the Sudanese government and the Janjaweed militia, including President Omar al-Bashir, who was charged with genocide. The ICC has also submitted confidential requests for summons to appear for 3 Stafford rebel commanders allegedly responsible for attacks on African Union peacekeepers. In July 2009, the African Union announced it would not cooperate with the ICC in arresting al-Bashir, who is the President of Sudan. China and Russia have long helped extend the Darfur conflict by using the United Nations Security Council veto to protect the Khartoum government from further economic sanctions. 10% of China's oil comes from Sudan, and in return they provide Khartoum with the money that they require for waging its war. Sudan has also purchased $100 million worth of arms from China. These weapons are used against civilians in Darfur. This is having a significant negative impact on the crisis as it is fueling the Darfur conflict. China and Russia continue to supply weapons such as ammunition, despite the obvious evidence that these arms are being used against Darfur civilians. With China and Russia continuing to provide Sudan with a constant flow of weapons, the conflict in Darfur is continuing to sustain.